Lightning Swamp is a large seasonal wetland. It has at least 7 species of recorded frogs, and what makes it unique is that you can observe merging vegetation of dry land and wetland, and it has a significant perch wetland which has a Category 4 protection.
Victoria Flats, this is our really special sedge site for Chaetanthus aristatus, really special. We've worked on this area since 2001, just actually weed eradication to bring back the small native herbs every spring.
I've got 2 projects that I'm working on at the moment. One's been going for some years, that's at Throssa Reserve, which is a surfacing granite outcrop at Soyce Valley. And the big thing there's been the Babiana, which is covered in Babiana.
Our biggest one probably at Mary Carroll, which has been going for Mary Carroll Lake in Gosnells, which has been going for some time. It's a really active friends group led by Eunice, who is the champion of the sort of area. She's involved with land care all through that sort of Gosnells area. And we do all sorts of stuff. We have school kids involved, we have general public, and all sorts of people come down to, I guess, help with the planting and the weeding, which is always an ongoing sort of issue there.
Our current project is at Pelican Point with SALP. We're revegetating. It's an absolutely important part of the Swan Estuary Marine Park. Our great joy is that we've been able to get the funding through SALP for erecting an osprey tower, which is going up tomorrow.
We've been fortunate enough to get another grant from SALP working on the place we've already started, which is part of the Railway Reserve's Heritage Trail in Mount Helena. We had removed a lot of woody weeds, we have planted, we have sprayed for weeds, and we now have an opportunity to get rid of the woody weeds that we couldn't get rid of in the first round of working hard there.
Lower Helena runs for 7 k's through Midland and Guildford, and the fact that the river is a winding, meandering river means that we have a lovely wide foreshore reserve going through, bringing green right through those suburbs. Our focus is to upgrade get rid of the exotics, and to upgrade the understory with the correct native plants, and increase the animal fauna. We're also concerned to establish best practice in fire control, controlling fuel.
When the kids come through from the different school groups helping us out with our land care projects, it's just fantastic to see some of the kids, when they sort of come in, the teachers will sort of explain to you that, you know, they're a bit of a trouble in the class, or, you know, they're not that engaged with the regular sort of learning that happens in the schools. And it's often that these kids are the ones that are the most enthusiastic about getting their hands dirty, getting in there, planting, putting the plants in the ground. They're really keen to learn about the environment, and they often tell me things that, you know, I don't know, you know, names of different birds and stuff like that.
Well, for me, most satisfying is working with a community group that are really interested in what you're doing, covering all ages, and really committed to whatever grant process we have.
We have noticed a number of flocks of Carnaby black cockatoo sort of migrating through the bushland. For us, seems to be increasing every year.
The most satisfying aspect of my project is seeing the birds sitting in trees that I've planted, seeing the tadpoles in the creeks so that you know that the water quality is good, and seeing the vegetation and the wildlife coming back.
So the most satisfying outcomes are when we have birds that are returning to that site that perhaps haven't been seen there. And for example, it was written in the literature that the buff-banded rail was more or less disappeared from around Perth, and they've been starting to come back in some numbers.
It's like a small Kings Park in the metro area with, you know, freshwater billabong, saltwater, a Denia lagoon, and having a river system It's just a wonderful area.
We had a little friend come over to chat to us, and it was a little willy wagtail flittering around. But this little one, we decided in the end, must have been nesting, because it continued to hover around my rather woolly hair and eventually landed on my head and really didn't want to get off. And I had to knock it away, and then it jumped on my shoulder, and eventually it sat on my hand, and I said, well, thank you very much for joining us here on the beach. And this little willy wagtail's actually popped around quite a few times. It's a great joy.
We're not young. We are people who've got a little bit of time that early in the morning. So the characters are just people who've got a fair bit of life experience, a wry sense of humour, and we have a lovely morning together.
I think possibly George Agar, who's a birdo, an ornithologist. George is very unpredictable, straight to the point, straight to your throat, tells you if you've got it wrong, and that's George.
I was working in an area and my head was down, and I was unaware of a disturbance that was going on in the very near distance, and then I actually found that I'd stumbled into a beehive, and it pursued, or they pursued me. I certainly ended up with about 5 stings on my face and ear, and that was the end of me for the day. I decided I could cut from that and go home.
Had quite a funny but scary experience. I was at the small billabong at Nicholson Road, Billabong, and I slipped in the mud, and so I couldn't get up immediately, so I just sort of sat there, and this tiger snake was swimming towards me, which was a little bit hairy, but I wasn't really scared, and it wasn't really interested in me. It just came onto the bank and was trying to get warm, and we just sort of sat there looking at each other. It was quite fascinating, really.
The SALP funding is really important, because without it there's work that's really important which simply could never have gotten done. Being able to eradicate the Babiana at Throssa Reserve, it's a surfacing granite outcrop with really unique flora, we simply couldn't do it. We tried for 5 years by ourselves as a group, and we had very little impact on it. So the SALP funding is really important. It's made a tremendous difference.
The SALP funding that we receive, we use pretty much, it's devoted to buying plants and doing the weed control. So even though we have volunteers that will help with hand weeding and stuff like that, the broad scale of the sites is just too much for total manual removal. So that's been really important, because a lot of these sites were infested. These are like the base sort of level sort of things that come with the funding, but they're essential to the rest of it, which you wouldn't get the people there unless they had the planting to do, unless they could come out and help with hand weeding and stuff like that. So that aspect of it is crucial, I think, to public involvement and community involvement. Yeah,
the work that we do costs money, and to be able to get tools and equipment, to be able to actually buy the sedges and the plants that we put in, it all takes money, without which we wouldn't be doing reforestation work, revegetation. We can pull out weeds, but if you pull out weeds and you don't replace it with something that's important in that location, another weed will just come back in. So the important work that we do about revegetation is to put in the right species.